good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Influential You podcast. I'm Josh D'Amigo, program faculty member for Influential You and your host for the weekly podcast. At Influential You, we teach you how to take charge of your career and amplify your professional influence. Since 2009, we've helped thousands of business owners, executives, and entrepreneurs become more influential, more rewarded, and more you. Today, we welcome one of my favorites, Codie Wright, to the Influential You podcast. Codie is a best-selling author, speaker, trainer, and lecturer at Texas A&M University. She's also the founder of a company called Inspire Academy Texas. Now, she has taught over 3,000 students in her role, and through her work, she found that many of her clients don't have a clue what they'd like to do post-high school or after college graduation. She co-authored a book, and I didn't hit the save button, so she's going to have to remind me what that book is called, but it's on career development, and I've read this book and shared it with others, which is why I couldn't find it and show it to you today. But you can find out more about Codie by visiting her website, inspireacademytexas.com. Once again, her website is inspireacademytexas.com. Codie joins us from College Station, Texas. So if you would, hit that like button, send us a comment, or smash the follow button so we know you're listening, and welcome Codie Wright to the Influential You podcast. Now, Codie, before we begin, before we set up all of our friendship and everybody sees how much we love each other, why don't you start by telling me how you even found out about us? Because you came to us not through the normal Josh D'Amigo selling somebody. You came through my co-founder, Kirkland Tibbles. So I'd love to know how you even heard about Influential You.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks for asking. So it was totally unexpected of the way that I came to Influential You. So I had a great mentor and dear friend of mine named Graham Weston be like, hey, you need to meet this guy named Kirkland Tibbles. And I thought, that's an interesting name. I've never heard of a name like Kirkland before. And he started to tell me about what Kirkland was doing and how much of an impact that IU was having on a ton of people. So Kirkland and I had a lovely chat and a great conversation. And he said, I think that you would probably benefit from being involved in IU. And I was like, okay, great. Sounds good. I still didn't know what I was getting myself into, really, classic performer, like sells all of the really wonderful high parts. And but it was a great conversation. And through the way of meeting Kirkland and talking about this wonderful program, I was able to meet you. And so it was just a really kind of like backwards way, I think, of finding IU. But I like to tell people that IU found me, or like we found each other at the perfect time, because I was going through such a transitional period in my life. And so it was truly, I think, the right moment at the right time.
It's so good. It's so good. And I can't wait to get into this because we work so much together. I mean, we got really close. In fact, we both went through some hard stuff around the same time, and you mailed me the most beautiful oil painted photo of my dog Buddy after he passed away. It is in my room, and I see it all the time. So I think about you quite often. But it's funny because from my point of view, I saw it the other way, right? Like, I work with Kirkland Tibbles, and I heard about this guy with this funny name, Graham Weston, who Kirkland studied with forever ago, and went on to do big things. And I actually heard about Graham during COVID and what he was doing in San Antonio with the local community for COVID vaccines and things like that. So it's really inspiring that these two people that you and I both revere got together, said, Codie needs to do this, and then you and I get introduced in some way, shape, or form. But before we get to the fun part of the story where I jump into your life, tell me about what was life like. You said you were going through some transitions. You're an expert in sales, so I'd love to hear a little bit about why that might be really beneficial for you, why you thought that might be beneficial for you. And secondly, tell me about like your world. What was life really going on for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, let's go back to, I guess it would have been like November, December 2021. I had just recently purchased a house, so I went through the whole brand new new home buying process, which was, as many of you homeowners know, very daunting. So especially during that market at that time. So I was at a point in my life where I knew, look, I want to take everything to the next level professionally in my business. I really want to take a really hard look at my health. Where am I? Where's my baseline, and where do I want to move to, essentially? Like, how do I want to improve? Because I've always been in the transition of, okay, how can I move on to the next thing? What is the next goal that I need to achieve? So I just purchased a house, and I had just got started with IU. And what I loved so much about the onboarding process was it really made you take a very hard look at all of these different areas of your life and truly how satisfied you were in all of these different areas. And while I was wanting to make this like total life transformation, I didn't realize that it was going to ask me to be so critically honest with myself. And so I think that was, like step one was, I really had to not take off the mask, but like I really had to sit down and be like, okay, let's have an honest conversation about ourselves of like, what are my satisfactions about the different conditions of life that I am in? And, kind of like put myself in that mindset of we're ready to make that kind of change.
Yeah, that's so good, right? Because what I tell a lot of people when they're starting with Influential You, it's really good for people who are trying to figure out what's next. And it's really good for people who are really set with where they are and want to improve. So it sounds like you were kind of in a little bit of both because, you had these things you were doing and you were leveling up. And you've done a fair amount of training yourself. Just list a few of the things that you have in your expertise when it comes to what you teach and how you lecture at Texas A&M when it comes to sales.
Certainly. So my focus is business to business sales. I teach 4 different courses at Texas A&M. And I'm also a coach as well. So I coach in Gallup Strengths Finder assessment, which gives you your top 5 strengths, as well as the extended DISC assessment. But focusing primarily on what I teach at A&M, my topics include customer relationship management, advanced sales and sales management, sales analytics, body observation, emotional intelligence, how to read people's facial expressions. And so those are some of the things that I like to focus on. Negotiations is also something that I talk about as well. So, and I added it up not too long ago, and I have been in the classroom. Like I have actually been teaching in front of somebody else for over 10,000 hours.
Come on,
Isn't that
listen
wild?
here. First off, let's just get real quick. You teach all of that stuff. What do you need us for? That's silly. Like let's be real. Someone with your expertise that has, personality profiling kind of there, who has like some of the other things when it comes to processes and peopling, what in the world could have been said to you to say, no, you need this?
Everybody, I would say to your question, everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs training. Everybody needs polishing and what I loved so much about IU is it was a very coachable in the moment type of program and we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but like how you had to track your progress in the moment was so helpful to me. So to your answer, everybody needs a coach. Everybody needs at some point in their life. And it was specifically for that time for me in that moment to take a good hard look at where am I and where do I want to go. So I would say I was both in the I want to level up, but also I'm looking for a transition type of phase.
That's
So
such a good answer.
I published the book in 2019 with Dr. Litzenberg, and I was like, I kind of had that itch to start working on something else.
That's so good. Yeah, and that book, we'll talk about it in a second because it was so valuable for me that I was like, oh, if I was 20, if someone handed me this book, and so I handed it to a 20-year-old, which is really good. And Jose, if you're watching this, I need that book back. Second, you also told me before that you were also kind of skeptical, that there was a bit of skepticism when you started. And you would never tell me the truth there because you're a performer, so you're going to skirt around that uncomfortable truth. But why were you skeptical about what you were kind of like getting yourself into or hearing when you first began?
Well, I hadn't never known anybody who had gone through IU. And so I was just a little skeptical from the perspective of there was nobody that I knew personally who had gone through this. Now I looked over the website and I saw testimonies. I talked to Kirkland, I talked to you, I talked to Marnie, and I think what really made it like solidified in my mind that this was what I wanted to do was after I talked to Graham Weston about this incredible like program that one of his really trusted friends was doing. But yeah, I was skeptical because I didn't know really what I was getting myself into. I didn't know the people who I was going to be interacting with on a weekly basis whenever it came to my cohort, nor did I know like what type of strengths that they came with, what kind of background that they came with from IU. So I think like whenever I told you that I was skeptical, I think like under that skepticism surface was just an unawareness of what IU was. And if I'm being like completely self-assessing here, I would say probably I was just nervous about going through something like this that was going to create such a lasting change in my life.
Well, that's a great answer. We can end the podcast there. Thank you so much. But it was so fun because I got to know you around session 3. Like I tried to get together before, and I told Kirkland, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna love her. She's wonderful." And typical performer, boy, we were flaking on each other and we couldn't get those meetings going and we were struggling to transact. But when we finally did, it was like we hit the ground running.
Yes.
And I remember from that moment, I don't know if you know this, I told your study group, I had meetings with your study group and asked each of them to individually tell you that Josh is awesome and you should totally meet with him.
They did.
To use some social proof on you. So now,
they did.
It's so fun. Now, for you, I would love to hear, kind of getting into this and you start to warm up to the program. It sounds like you started to learn really quickly about your personality and it was holding you back by the way that you viewed measurements. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your naivete when it came to tracking and progress.
Well, that's a really great question. And I would say one of the most impactful things about going through this program was that tracking the progress. I'm a performer. I'm an optimistic person, right? But I'm also a realistic person too. Whenever I say that I'm going to do something, I'm going to get it done. But I wasn't tracking and specifically measuring, okay, what is this tangible goal that I can move forward towards? And what is something that I can do today that just moves that mark a little bit? And for me, like one of the things that I really focused on that year, and starting in like whenever I did IU and like the beginning of January 2022 was my health. And I have to say, like based on the metrics that I measured with IU, specifically whenever it came to my health and my lifestyle, I lost 22 pounds in 2022. My little light turned off on me, so I'm gonna turn it back.
Oh, you're fine.
Likes to turn off every now and then. Well, we're just gonna roll with it, okay?
So, it looks good. You look great.
But yeah, so I lost weight, and it was something like, and I had struggled with losing weight for like my entire life. But when I realized that this was something that I could really track and measure and like put all of these like structure around, it was extremely helpful for me.
That's so good. And you also wrote in the notes, you said something about being arrogant to think you were capable to remember everything on your to-do list. And yes. I'm gonna rant on this for just a second because one of my favorite papers in the Fundamentals of Transaction comes from a thing that John Patterson has taught me, and it's if you pair a task list with your calendar, you'll get things done.
Yes.
And in that paper, I asked Kirkland, he said he wrote it. He said, you need to get all of the things that you want to do on one sheet of paper, all the things you have to do, all the things you're lying to yourself that you're going to do that you're never actually going to do, get all of it in one spot and then start putting it into your calendar. Now, you said that was a really big thing for you that made things concrete to deliver on commitments that you made. It's been about 1.5 years, 2 years. Is that still something that you're still practicing when it comes to kind of overwhelm or getting things done?
Yes, absolutely. Because, like there are just so many different things going on in my life, right? Like I've got my business outside of my full-time job. I've got my full-time position at Texas A&M. I've got my writing. I've got my social life. I've got my health to think about, right? So when I feel like I am getting overwhelmed, like stressed out to the max, I think to myself, let's go back to the to-do list. Let's see where we are with that and let's look at that schedule. But when you do a brain dump of like all of the things that you have to get done and you put it on that sheet of paper, at least for me, my goodness, my brain is just free. It takes back that, it allows me to take back that mental real estate that is so valuable that I can use for working creatively on a project or for having a very intentional conversation with a friend, so that I'm not sitting there and drinking my coffee and in the back of my mind thinking, did I switch my laundry over? Or did I send that email? Because it's just not fair to show up like that with your colleagues, with your friends, and with your family. And so putting those things on my schedule not only helped me get more of those things done, it helped me not break commitments to myself, because I was really good, really, really good at the start of IU to deliver on what I would tell someone else that I would do, but I was not necessarily that great on doing what I told myself that I would do. And what that does is it starts to break down trust in you, like in you. I got to a point at some point in my life where I'm like, do I truly, and that was one of the questions that I had to ask myself during IU is, do I trust myself? Do I trust that I'm going to deliver on what I say that I'm going to do? And that was kind of a hard conversation. Sometimes you have to look yourself in the mirror and have those conversations of, what kind of promises am I breaking to myself? And it historically had been not working out, not like getting my tasks done that I needed to get done, like at home. I would be much more likely to go and help somebody, like do something at their house versus, taking care of my to-dos. So yeah, that was a game changer
That's
for
so
me.
good.
And then
Because
Marnie Power was like, you should use OneNote that helps you like prioritize those tasks. And I was like, just let me kiss the ground that you guys are, because it was really helpful.
I mean, human beings with the right tools can be rather effective. Shout out to Windows and OneNote. I'm sure it's Microsoft that makes it,
Yeah.
but we don't fully endorse them. But if they want to sponsor the show, we're open to
Yes.
it.
You guys can sponsor the podcast.
So, Codie, we're going to come back in a second and talk more about this. But I also, there's one other thing that if you're paying attention at home, performers love our freedom. And we get more freedom when we schedule things, and it's just a wonderful feeling when that comes around. So, Codie, we'll be right back with you in just a second. But first, I'm going to make sure that each and every one of you knows that this podcast is only made possible because of our self-guided program at Influential You called Thrive. Thrive is a self-paced learning tool that gives you the tools you need to level up, similar to what Codie did. Now, this is regardless of where you are in your career. Now, you used to only be able to try this out for 7 days, but now we're going to give you a free coupon to use it for 30 days for free. It's a free 30-day trial of the Thrive program, like literally giving you a whole month to test drive our baby. If you'd like to use this, the coupon code is 30 days. It's 30DAYS at checkout. And you can go to influentialu.global/thrive to find out more. Or if you're in the US or Canada, you can text the word Thrive to 805-262-9008, and we'll send the registration link right to your mobile phone. Again, grab that number that's right there on your screen. Text the word Thrive to 805-262-9008, and you can cancel Thrive at any time. Go to influentialu.global/thrive and use the keyword 30 days. Now, Codie, it's funny to me because when you're saying all of that, it seems so easy, but people don't do it. In fact, I think it's a performer thing. It may just be a human thing where more often than not, if I hold a commitment with you, I'm so worried about letting you down that I tend to hold my commitments with other people much stronger than the commitments that I hold with myself. And what I'm hearing you say is basically Influential You gave you a place where you could actually prove that you are who you say you are. A lot of people say, oh, when I say I'm going to do something, I actually do it. And when you actually look at the facts or measure the results and consequences of their work, they don't do it. Do you feel that's a fairly honest quote about kind of your experience in that realm? Or tell me a little bit more about what that does in your brain.
Yeah, I think what IU did was it gave me the permission to be able to fulfill those commitments to myself. If that might sound silly, but for someone who's a recovering people pleaser, I would put myself on the back burner and put everyone else up front. And so what IU did was it gave me the permission to hold myself accountable. It allowed me to show myself that I can show up for me, and that what I need to do is more. I'm not saying it's like what I need to do, and all of the things on my schedule are valuable, they are relevant, they are important, and they're not lesser than what everyone else needs me to do. If that makes sense.
That's really good. And I'm gonna move us to kind of talk a little bit more about what you learned in the program, because I'm understanding the measuring and how important that is. You also said that it was really valuable to know where people are in a decision in the transaction cycle. You also said that the program helped you give grace to other people in your life who maybe didn't look at the world the same way that you did. I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of what you learned with the exchanges that we make in the transaction cycles and the different personalities. I'd love for you to just rant a little bit about what you learned there.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So what I loved so much about the transaction cycle was that it is very easy after going through, these different programs, is that you can look at where someone on your team and know how they perform the best in a phase of a transaction cycle. As a performer, I'm ready for people to say yes. I'm ready for them to sign, seal, and deliver. And just because we had a conversation doesn't mean that they are committing to it. And that was like a light bulb that went off for me, is that we see progress as different things. Performers, they see progress as having conversations. And so, but that resonated so very much with me. So, what I also really enjoyed was knowing where someone was in the transactions, in the transaction cycle, and being able to ask questions to confirm where they are, and not pushing them along, or making them feel like they need to speed up that process, but just taking their temperature of where they are and what their comfort level is. And that, I think that just helped me be even more comfortable with having those conversations, right? It also, and as someone who is a coach, especially with assessments and personality and behavioral assessments, I came into this knowing that people are going, they just show up in the world differently. They have a different filter that they look through, and a lens that they look through when interacting with other people in the world. But sometimes, even though I'm a coach, I can forget that, right? And so what this did was it really helped me it helped me really assign a title to different people in my life, and think, oh, it's not that they don't like me, it's that they are still processing where they are at in the transaction cycle, or maybe they're just a little bit quieter than I am, or maybe they don't have anything to say, or they are coming into this conversation with a lot of criticism, but it's grounded in facts. It's not grounded in them trying to hurt my feelings. So that was really powerful for me.
And it's a practice, right? Because even though you've had all this coaching, you've had all this education, you've even taught it for your 10,000 hours, you've got your Malcolm Gladwell genius hat on, at the same time, it's a practice, because human beings in the moment, to actually use some of the things that we teach and actually improve the satisfaction of different areas of life takes deliberate practice. It's not simple, which is why we teach it over a 6-month program, so you can learn and develop slowly over time. And I think this is probably where we'll park a lot of the rest of the conversation, because this had a really powerful impact for you, much more powerful so than a lot of other people, because you and I started to go through some things afterwards, and we had to really hone in on making life at some points not thrive, but just survive in some ways because of how difficult it was. To the extent, and before we get into this, I just have to say, our CEO and co-founder, John Patterson, is watching right now, and he wrote, "Congratulations on all your successes. Cheers to a fellow Texas A&M grad. He's class of 87.
Whoop.
I wasn't sure if you knew that about John or not, but anytime I get to mention my CEO on the podcast, my life gets better. Now, Codie, life is much more straightforward now, and you've been able to recall some doctrines and things you learned in here, but I'd love for you, in your own words, and to the extent that you're comfortable, tell me a little bit about life after and how you use some of this to sort of stay on track with measuring kind of what you were doing, and how you kind of have used this in a pragmatic way to live your life."
Great. So one of the things that you just said really resonated with me throughout the entire process, which was, this is you in practice, right? Life is practice. It's not it's executing, but like you are struggling through it. And I think that the mistake that a lot of people make is they feel like they are going to set a goal, do really, 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 really well, and reach that goal with very few obstacles. And when they reach that obstacle, when there is a little bit of resistance and they run into those barriers, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Well, for anybody who has ever been in an athletic sport, or anyone who has ever been in any type of organization or group where you have to go and perform, you know that practice has to be, you have to practice in order for you to get better, in order for you to perform effectively. And so for me, whenever I realized that, okay, everyone else is kind of blindly bumping through it, like to get towards the goal, and they're struggling too, I think it gave a lot, I think a lot of people grace whenever they came to that realization. So I really love how the idea or the concept of practicing was something heavily embedded into the curriculum. How it has helped me after is being able to continue to track and measure my performance. So the health, like the condition of life that I've continued to focus on is my health. That I've continued to focus on is my business, and being able to add more people to the to the people that I coach, like increase the amount of people who come to conferences, things like that. And then also I enjoy being able to utilize it in other areas of my life, like in my career at Texas A&M, in my relationships, like with friends and family and things like that. Like just being able to measure the different satisfaction levels and what can happen, what can we do in order to increase that. So I know that was a very kind of broad overview of what it was, but I look back on my experience with IU just with a huge appreciation, because that was truly, whenever I tell people, when people ask what is one of your hardest years that you've ever been through, 2022 is it for me. And IU really helped me stay on track mentally, because it really helped my mental health, because I was able to focus on the things that I could control. And those were the conditions of life that I was practicing on at that time.
Yeah. And if you're uncomfortable speaking about this, let me know, but I'm going to share this because you and I have shared a lot about a similar faith. And I like to tell people, and I say it on the podcast often, my dad, when I was growing up, used to say this quote, "Trust God and have a plan." And Influential You has become my plan, in the sense of here's how I'm going to operate, here's how I'm going to move, and then leave it up to how it goes. And in that year, 2022 was one of the hardest for me as well, because I had lost my grandmother and my dog within 24 hours of each other. And I had to do kind of what you said, control the controllables and start to decline things and get them out of my world so I could focus on some sort of normalcy. And it really helped my mental game. It helped me to stay positive And I joined a bereavement group that helped me to kind of get over some of the hurt and pain that was going on, and put myself into places where I could get the resources that allowed me to live a satisfactory life, even in the midst of all of those hard things. Now, to that extent, I'd love to hear kind of your whatever you'd like to share kind of about that topic, and wherever you'd like to go is fine with me.
Yeah, certainly. So I lost my co-author that I wrote Launchers with. He passed in March of 2022, and he was one of my biggest mentors. He was very influential in my life, and so it had been a while since I lost someone that close. And so, the grieving process really happened, but that was like really when we were like in the thick of it, like towards the end of IU. And so it just really helped me, focus on what I could control, like what I needed to do in order to kind of take my mind off of some of the pain that I was going through. Right. So that happened. One of my dear friends lost quite a few members of his family in a very tragic accident, and that was very traumatic because I'm very close with their family. They're like a second family to me, and so that was nothing I had ever experienced before of having to be there with people grieving while also grieving alongside of them, and still trying to be like a really good support system for them. And yeah, so those were some of the things that I was going through during that time, and it all happened like one after the other, and I was like, okay, like I would love a little bit of a break here, but it's just funny how when things happen, like you can either let it spin out of control and focus and ask the question, why is this happening to me? Instead of what I really tried to ask myself during that time is, what can I learn from this? And who can I lean on? I think a lot of times when we are going through some sort of difficult situation, we think that, we have to do it all on our own. We put all of our stress rocks into a backpack and we try to, truck it along ourselves. Whereas we can take one of those things and hand it off to somebody, either like, go to counseling to deal with that, or to, let the people in your life help you with things that they can help you with. Because whenever someone offers to transact with you in that way to help you, and if it will actually take some things off of your plate when you are in a dark season, whenever you're going through a hard time, it's going to make them feel better, and it's probably going to make your life a little bit easier too. So because if you always say yes to something, if you're always a yes man of doing a favor or doing something else with resentment, that does not allow someone else to say yes. And if you say yes whenever you mean to say no, you are showing up in an inauthentic way. You might feel required to, you might feel the pressure to, you might feel that internal pressure from that other person for you to say yes. But one thing that I've really incorporated into my practice, and this is what I encourage some clients to do as well, is to decline things that is not an absolute yes. Like if you don't feel something inside of your gut like flip and get excited, then there is something to pause for there. But wait and think about it before you say yes.
It's so valuable because, and I think about how often people pleasers are always the yes men, and then when you're doing that self-care and you need to take care of, and you need to close things off, and you have to say no, it can be so difficult, and many people won't take the time to really assess accurately what they need. And they just jump into the next thing or try to keep themselves busy. And I'm so glad that you had those tools and are still practicing. So I would love to reverse roles. So I would love to switch with you now. And now you are I'm really excited about this. Now you are the instructor, if you will. I am the student. Teach me something about transactional competence from your world, in which this is an everyday, you're regularly using something that you've learned through the Fundamentals of Transaction program?
That's a good question. I didn't know you were going to do the little flip you do. I love it, though. I think it's great. So teaching sales, there is a very, very strategic flow of the steps of the selling process, right? And what I love so much about that is that it is this cyclical type of transaction, very similar to, not identical to, but similar to the different phases in a transaction, right? Okay. And so when I first saw that transaction wheel, I was like, man, this makes this, the light bulb really went off in my mind, because it was very similar to the modality and the way that we teach the actual steps of the selling process. So what I would say for anybody who is listening is that the phases of the transaction cycle are valuable for you to learn. They're also valuable for you to understand when there is a breakdown and why different individuals are having that breakdown. Ultimately, what I think is, so great about the transaction cycle is that it can be communicated and checked in upon, and taking, you can take the temperature at any moment and see where someone is comfortable, like comfortably in that transaction cycle. Because when you start to try and pull somebody along or push somebody along, you might get a yes, but you might not necessarily get someone's full commitment. So if you are being pushy or feeling like you have the requirement to pull somebody on into that next phase, maybe it just means that they're not ready, or maybe it also means that maybe they should not be transacting with you if they are not committed to moving forward. And that's okay, because there are different seasons in life where maybe this would work or maybe it wouldn't work. And I've had to fire clients before, or say, hey, let's take a pause, let's take a break. I need you to evaluate whether or not this is something that we can continue doing, because this is what I've assigned to you. This is the homework or the soul work that I've asked you to do. You haven't gotten it done. You want to continue paying me to be your coach. It's just not fair to you if you're holding up your end of the deal. You're not fulfilling your contract.
So good. And we're going to measure it. Measure it. And I love that, Codie. Thank you so much. And Codie, I'm going to take us out by kind of summarizing what I heard from this. And I just want to say thank you for being a guest. This has been a long time coming. I'm finally excited.
Yes.
And I look forward to talking with you after the show.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Thank you, Codie. And that's Codie Wright. We'll talk more about her in just a second. But here's kind of my takeaways from what I heard with what Codie was talking about. You can hear that performer personality coming out with her. It's all about the people, right? And it's really fascinating to hear some of the language that she used when you go back through. And if you listen to it again, what you'll hear is oftentimes she's faulting on the part where it comes to the people. The people are the most important thing, and working with them in ways that feel authentic, not just for them, but also for herself. It's really fascinating because there's a need to be human when we're going through things. And I believe at Influential You, what we teach is a process that allows you to be human, but also think accurately with where you are and what's the next step or process that you need to do in order to get back to normal. So I just think that Codie is wonderful, and I hope you do too. We'll talk a little bit more about her business, but if you'd like to know more about us here at Influential You, I invite you to go to influentialyou.global, where you can explore our courses, consulting, and conferences. We offer a 4-year curriculum for those who want the most advanced experience. However, if you're brand new to Influential You, maybe this was your first time listening, we recommend that you start with Thrive. It's our self-guided training. Thrive is a self-guided program that lets you learn at your own pace. Our members enjoy weekly live e-coaching sessions and an ever-expanding library of exclusive video lessons with our faculty, thought leaders, and industry experts. You get proven proprietary tools to accurately assess your career and develop realistic strategy to achieve your aims faster. Your membership also includes chat access to faculty plus discounts to our transformative conferences, where you can meet some of the members that you hear on our podcast Like Codie. Codie, you have to come to conference. Sign up today for Thrive and use promo code 30days. That's 30DAYS, and you'll get a free 30-day test drive of Influential U's Thrive program. That code is 30 days. Once again, you may cancel at any time. Thank you for listening today. We stream our podcast at 2 p.m. Pacific on our website, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, so you can easily share it with others. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or any other place that you find quality podcasts. Check out our show notes for links to connect with Codie, plus links to websites, books, or special downloads that we talked about on today's episode. This podcast is made possible by the Influential U staff, faculty, and our members all over the world. Special thanks to our executive producer, Tyson Crandall, with contributions from John Patterson, in-studio producer, Michael Teehee, Joey Anderley, Daryl Anderley, Paul West, and everyone's favorite Liz Smiley. A special thanks to our guest today, Codie Wright. Thank you for your words of wisdom and for being my guest. It's such a treat to even know you, Codie, so thank you. The link to find out her website is in the show notes. We'll also flash it right up there on the screen right now so that you can get to Codie's website. Go to inspireacademytexas.com and find out more about what she's doing. The Influential U podcast is produced by Influence Ecology, LLC in Ventura, California. And this episode was recorded on September 13th, 2023. The podcast theme is by Chris Standring, entitled Fast Train to Everywhere. And if you haven't yet offered a rating or review, I ask that you take a moment, go to iTunes or your podcast app, and let us know what you think. This helps us more than you know. And we'll see you next time on the Influential U podcast.